Shout out to Farrier Box. We've had Shannon from Farrier Box get involved with us, and that has been great. We get to offer you guys 25% off of your first subscription to the box, and it's a pretty cool deal because it's good stuff. That's the coolest part about it. Each time I get one, I'm like,
yeah, you get something
like
cool
everything in this box.
The cool thing is you could be having say you're shopping online or whatever, and you're like, oh, maybe I want to try that, maybe I want to try that, but you never really want to push through and get it. Well, they're gonna send. You never know, you might get it, you might not, but you're gonna get that item and be like, oh god damn, they got it for me. Now I get to try it, see if you like it. And most of the times,
there's always
so
many options of things. So this month there was a sandbox, and it was a foot finishing box. Well, there's quite a few of them on the market right now, but this is the one that that all the top competitors use. This is the good one. So you aren't screwing around trying to figure out or wasting money on what one's back and forth. She gets advice from top cans. So it's everything in it is sweet and is what people are actually using.
You're not going to get some hokey pokey equipment.
No, this one came with it. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Forging Brains Podcast. I'm Riley Kirkpatrick with my co-host Gavin Cooper. Today we got a pretty cool guest. We got Doug Russo. Doug is a farrier at Iowa University, and he's just all around cool guy. He's got a lot of stuff going on with the AFA. He's done some competing, and he's also lost a thumb, so he's pretty educated out there in the world. Thank you, Doug, for joining us. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Good. Just busy.
Springtime. I'm finally on the downhill of crazy horse people, so it's pretty nice.
You got past the spring rush?
Yeah. It's pretty much mellowing out now. It's not any little add-ons here and there every single day, so that's been sweet.
Yeah, so for the record, my thumb is the only part I'm missing. So
okay.
Yeah, I just want to get that out there right now.
So you haven't lost anything else since we saw you last time then?
No, so I'm good. I'm complete.
Well, how did you end up losing your thumb originally then?
Yeah, I lost it roping. Yeah, I'm not even a good roper, so it was a surprise. But yeah, it was something.
It was a surprise. It wasn't even planned out.
No, and I'm not an A-type personality, but I still like to plan major events like that. So it was
major surgeries.
It was spur of the moment. Yeah. I didn't catch it. I didn't get it on the horn, but after I dallied and my hand was back, my dallies popped off the horn and there was a loop around my thumb.
Oh, shit.
It was fast. So wearing a bright orange roping glove makes your thumb really easy to find.
He's laying on the ground.
It popped clean off then.
Yeah.
Did it bleed a lot?
It didn't bleed too bad. It started to bleed a little more. It was almost like I think it cauterized it as it came off because it wasn't like a gusher. And it's fast. You talk to other people that lost fingers roping, and it's you don't even know it happens till it's on the ground.
And you're looking for a Cheeto on the ground. Right,
Cheeto.
Yeah.
Over there looking like a lost earplug.
Yeah. Yeah, like a big earplug. That's a good analogy.
So, I think you've told me that I know I've heard this story before, but it's a pretty good one of the rush to the hot, because you thought you were going to get to keep it, huh?
Yeah, well, it was at the Powder River Days in Sheridan, Wyoming, and we were right across the road and down just a little bit from the hospital. So I thought, so I mean, I was in shock. So it was a weird feeling because it was like I was almost like out of body. and the whole thing and I was with all my good friends. They took good care of me. Like, Sam picked up my thumb and he carried it out, and then I sat in the back and he handed my thumb to Toby, and then my buddy Wade ran to get a bag of ice, and Toby was really comforting. He he was knelt down next to me, rubbing my back, and he was telling me I was going to be okay. And the whole time he's holding my thumb right here in front of my face. Like, you're going to be okay, man. So then Wade pulled a pickup into the arena, and I got in the pickup, and Toby's wife, Amy, was going to drive me to the hospital, and she dumped the clutch on that ranch pickup and hit Wade pulling out of the arena. So
no way.
He went rolling. Yeah, so I was worried maybe Wade needed to come with us, but he was okay. Yeah. Wade
was in the arena. A little bit of a soft landing.
Yeah. Yeah, so they flew me to Denver and they sewed it back on, and they told me it was like a 50-50 chance of keeping it. Mm-hmm. And so by midday the next day, it wasn't getting any blood, so it was starting to get cold. So they took it off, and I might be better off probably without it, because I know other guys that they've sewn them back on, and it's like a chunk of wood. They don't ever get the feeling back, and the mobility's not quite as good. So then you got this extra thing sticking out. You're whacking it on everything all the time.
Yeah.
So I've done pretty good without it. So I can't. It's hard hitchhiking because people don't want to pick you up when your back's to them. So I can hitchhike in England, and then I was aspiring to be a movie critic, and that kind of hurt that venture
too. Do the thumbs up or thumbs down, huh?
Yeah, it's no
only one.
Just one thumb up for every movie.
You're gonna be one of those Rotten Tomato kind of guys, then.
Yeah.
On the bright side, you can never catch it again in the dally.
No. Yeah, and so it's really funny because it's like I said, I'm not a good roper, and I go out west once a year, and my friends would tolerate me playing cowboy with them pretty good, but after they amputated it the second time, the surgeon was talking to me about taking my big toe off and putting it, and they can transfer it to your hand.
No way.
Yeah, and they showed pictures. He was showing me pictures, and it looks like they trim it up to look like your other thumb. So other than having a scar down the back of it, you can't even tell.
What do you mean they trim it up?
Well, it's like,
like narrow it?
Yeah, because I got a big toe.
That's what I'm thinking. Is like you got Shrek on one hand and you got your regular thumb on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, because I knew a guy when I was a kid that he had his big thumb sewed on. It was just straight up the big toe. Like it was no trimming at all. It was just on there. It was a nub.
You looking like Igor.
Yeah. So he was showing me those pictures, and then they have another process.
like you had a catalog.
Yeah.
Your options.
Like what do you think of this one? So I think it was they started this in Japan, but in Japan they take off your little toe. Your like second to big toe. That looks a lot funnier having
because they have small hands.
Yeah. Yeah, but it still looks funny.
It was.
Yeah.
Golly.
Yeah. So, and I didn't really care much what it looked like, but it's funny because one of the biggest things that made me decide not to do it was the fact that I might cut my toe off then. So then what? Then I'm out of toe and a thumb. I'm like sooner or later you're going to run out of toes to transplant.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not a good roper.
So many chances of this.
Yeah.
This is a side rant. Like, those doctors aren't that good. Like, the guy that would be trimming the toe up, it's not like he's that good with hand tools.
I don't know. I never thought about that.
I had a friend. He just went through serious surgery. Like, he broke his pelvis in 2 spots, and his wife took a video of him he had 2 rods that were like a foot long, and there were 6 inches in them, and the guy that was handling the tools, like, he just looked like he'd never handled a pair of pliers before a day in his life.
And there he is, hammering a steel rod into
trying to twist it out. Like, yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it keeps missing and hitting your hip with the hammer.
Yeah, like, he was almost to the point, like, screw this, let me just twist it out. Like,
this lady I was just talking about, she had her knee replaced, and the bone that they cut to, like, put the knee in, you know, like the implant knee, it was 17 degrees off the zero, the cut. And so it's like she has to have the surgery again.
So, like, on an angle?
So if you had, like, a bad saw guy at the steel yard.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's like a cross-eyed surgeon was working on her.
They should hire guys like us to do the fine work. Like, all right, you open them up, get them clean. I'll come in and run the rasp. I'll trim the toe up.
Yeah.
And then you put it back on there.
Yeah. Yeah, we just don't fit any of the sterilization process. It's
Not
tough.
at all.
Yeah.
So how hard was it to learn to run your hoof knife again?
Nah, it wasn't. You know, the only thing I struggled with the hoof knife was getting it out of my apron. So, yeah. So I have, like, I added all these, I forged up some little hooks to put on the end of my handle. And people always ask, is that for hot fit and is that for picking feet out? It's no, so I can get it out of my apron. So I can hook it with my index finger and pull it out. Yeah. So holding the rasp is kind of tough. Like, if I'm one-handing the rasp with my right hand, because, like, if you guys pay attention to it, you got it between, like, wide ways between your thumb and your hand, so I can't grip it that way. So, but I got a lot better at doing things left-handed.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, so I go back and forth eating. Like, I'll eat some with my left hand, some with my right hand.
What about writing?
Writing, I still write with my right hand. I just squeeze the pen between these fingers. And I didn't write well to begin with anyway, so it didn't really get any worse. My penmanship.
So you're almost like the butler on Scary Movie when he coming in starting up the salad.
My strong hand.
It's my strong hand.
I never saw that. That's a lie.
Just the way you explain the way that you're writing it, just put that picture in my mind.
You just pinch it.
Yeah. I don't mean to be poking fun at you.
No, it's not fun.
What in horseshoeing was probably the hardest thing to relearn?
So I had to refigure out my hammer grip, and
I was wondering that.
Yeah, because I had a good mentor, and and even before I got into shoeing, I could swing a hammer. I did construction and framing and trim work and cabinet making. I had the hand-eye coordination, and I could swing a hammer hard. But I had, like, in forging, I had developed a nice loose grip, so it was like, thumb in my forefinger, and the hammer would pendulum, and I'd throw it just a little bit and just squeeze it lightly right at the end. And then when I first got back to forging, after I cut my thumb off, I was gripping super tight with these 3 fingers, trying to keep the stability in the hammerhead, keep it from rocking back and forth. Mm-hmm. And it was killing my forearm.
I bet.
Yeah, so, but I got that figured out. I probably will never have the stamina to forge like I did before, like competing all day. My hand will start to hurt, my forearm it'll hurt a little bit. I can still do it, but and then the only thing that still is kind of hard is drawing clips, because I got, like, coming into the corner of the anvil, when your hammer's on an angle, it wants to roll one side or the other, and I don't have a thumb across the shaft to stop that. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, it's like, even with all that stuff, you figure it out, and I think that was 6 years ago that happened, and I don't even think about it anymore.
Is there something that you think you do better now afterwards because you learned how to use your left hand, arm and hand so much better?
Oh, I never thought of that. No,
like a lot of us suck at rasping because we're too right-handed. Like we're always pushing down on our handle and stuff. Like that's why, like I always have the same high left side at my heel because I'm not that great with my left hand.
Yeah, I noticed you suck at that. It's a really good question, and to be honest with you, I haven't paid attention. What I have noticed, like one of my trimming nemesis is rolling my heels, and I roll my heel worse now on whichever heel I'm going to pull up with in my right hand, and because I got my hand like clear over the rasp trying to pinch it, and I just pushed down on it. But isn't it funny? Like, because it's funny you say that. It's a funny thing about shoers. It's like we all have. It's like our MO. Like my other MO is pulling toe clips off center, always in the same direction. But it's like, and you know what your MO is, and you just get really good at doing it still. Like 20 years later, I still do it. And I get mad every time, and the next horse I do it again.
I always refer to it as like shooting that old rifle that shoots a little high into the left, but for some reason you still always just throw it up at the crosshairs and throw the first one down range anyways. You're like, God damn, I knew it was off. Like, why did I do that? The second one, you can get it there, but it's like you always make the same mistakes over and over.
Yeah.
It's a funny deal. So we went pretty deep into there. Where'd you grow up, Doug? Did you grow up in that area in Iowa?
No, I grew up in Michigan. So I can't really point to where I grew up anymore. It's like, so that's stuff, everybody from Michigan can't tell you where they live without pointing to their hand. But so I grew up there. Really, I had an interest in horses at a young age, but never owned them. Then I worked as a wrangler at a summer camp for a few summers. But it's really weird. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like it's kind of the story with a lot of farriers that none of us really ever start out wanting to be a farrier. It's like if you'd asked me back then, or even when I was in my 20s when I worked on some places out in Montana, and that was the first couple of spots where I nailed shoes up. I'd trimmed a couple horses here or there in high school, and then but then not well, with no training, and then some cowboys taught me how to nail shoes on in Montana, and I hated it. It was I did really? Not want so I had to shoe horses for that place. I had to shoe the horses I was riding, and I couldn't stand it. It was the worst part of that whole job was having to shoe those horses.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Did you have any formal education at that point, or just at what they had taught you there at the ranch?
No, it was like, it's almost like sick people passing on diseases, right? It's like
it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, so somebody thought they had it figured out, and then they teach the next guy, and then that guy teaches the next guy. And you could kind of see how our trade suffered. Like, we're all pretty lucky. Like, we're in the heart of a renaissance in the shoe, especially in the U.S. In the shoeing industry. It's like it's in a really exciting time because it was like we're rediscovering the trade.
Yeah, that's why it's important for those that care, to teach and actually like pass it on, to keep doing that and pushing it on, instead of people that are just kind of don't necessarily care so much about it, but they just kind of pass it on, but like half-assedly,
Yeah.
And then it just keeps diminishing as it goes.
What parts do you think that we're rediscovering?
I think, for sure the focus on anatomy. I mean, and so it might be unfair for me to just reference my own, my own personal experiences, but and I guess another thing too that like I still like I didn't grow up with the internet. It wasn't around yet, right? But so that's another probably a major influencer that I don't think about. That's helped perpetuate this renaissance. But like 30 years ago, when I was tacking on the first set of shoes, I had no idea there was an American Farriers Association. I was living 6 hours away from Montana State University, where Scott Simpson was teaching at the time, and I had no idea it was there.
Yeah.
So and you talk to the guys back then that were part of it, going all the way back to those times, and a lot of them found out about it through like an ad in the Western Horseman or something like that. It was it wasn't easy to get the information.
Right.
So and it wasn't really till I found out that there was a whole other part of the trade I'd been missing that it became interesting to me. So watching a shoe forge for the first time blew my mind.
Do you think we lost some of our horseshoeing when we lost, we went through the revolution, right? Where all of a sudden now we got cars and everything going on. And so do you think that's when we lost a lot of our information? Because you read older books of guys shoeing high numbers of horses and everything. They cared about forging, they cared about coming up with therapeutic shoes, anatomy, keeping horses working. And there is a time where we lost it, where we lost connection with each other and everything. Do you think that's where it came from, or?
Well, I think historically, if you look at where we started losing the trade or the knowledge in the industry, came shortly after World War II. That's I'm kind of a nerd with some of that history, and so I search it out and try to read about it. But I forget the number of horses that were in World War I was 9 million something horses.
No way.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and then so by the time you get to World War II, it's I think it was in the thousands, 50. I shouldn't throw the number out there, but I mean it dropped way off after World War II. But even after World War II in the United States, it wasn't uncommon in the cities for the junk collectors to have horse-drawn wagons. They were still delivering milk with horses. Farms, a lot of farms, even though they had a tractor on the farm, still had a team they were using. And so they were still being used as draft animals for work, and then the very wealthy people owned them. But there was never any middle class in the United States that owned horses for pleasure until the 70s, 80s, and then that was when that renaissance occurred in our industry. Walt Taylor and a lot of those guys that recognized what needed to be done.
When was AFA started?
It was 52 years, so is it
71?
71. So, yeah. So we just did our 50 year. Yeah, I think it was 71. I should know it, but
yeah, that was 52 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So about the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
They noticed a need to kind of gather up some people and get a standard going. Was that kind of the goal of AFA when it started, right?
Yeah. Walt Taylor is I'm fortunate to be able to call him a friend. I mean, he took an interest in me, and Walt, if you guys haven't met him, he's the kind of guy that you can walk up and introduce yourself to him, and you see him a year or two later, and he remembers your name. He makes you feel good that way, you know what I mean? And he asks you questions about yourself, and he's got a genuine interest in people, but and he has a very interesting and varied history, and but his goal really with the American Farriers Association was a professional standard and a professional recognition within the industry. And I think in some ways he might be disappointed that it hasn't, that it didn't happen faster, or there was some pushback with some farriers on the way it happened. But I think he's really succeeded. I think that it's even grown, in a lot of ways far beyond maybe what he originally imagined. I know licensing was something he was a proponent of, and that's like when you bring up licensing in a farrier convention, it's like starting a food fight in a grade school.
Yeah, you get one side on one side. And...
Yeah. And I don't know.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
So you were in Montana and you were doing some cowboy and hating it. What made you all of a sudden want to start doing it for a living?
It wasn't until I was married, and I mean, I guess that's another part of my personality. Like maybe one of my more negative personality traits is I've always been fickle. Like the wind blows and I'm turning my head and going in different directions. So it was like, I was always in different trades. As soon as I got halfway good at one, I was looking to learn the next one, and so it was kind of one of those transitionary periods where I was at a point where it would work to learn a new career. I was just married. We didn't have a kid yet, but had one on the way. And
you guys were you guys still in Montana, you and Sue?
No, so we spent 2 years in Maine. That was another one of my wild hairs. And
yeah, because you guys were like living off the grid, weren't you?
Yeah, we had 140 acres in the mountains on the New Hampshire border.
No kidding.
Yeah, so and it was a pretty piece of property, and it was wild. I mean, we were the only. We had some neighbors that were about 2 miles away, and then other than that, we were the only ones out there.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. It was.
And you guys had your first kid there.
Yeah.
What were you doing there, like for work?
So I was building timber framed homes for a company out of Portland, and yeah, that was a skill I'd learned in Montana.
Okay.
Like true mortise and tenon, the whole traditional timber framed homes. So
like cutting the wood down there, cutting the wood in Maine, and then building the house right there on the property.
Well, yeah. So that was really fun, like pretty funny irony. Like all the houses that we built timber framed in Maine were from timbers cut in Montana.
I was wondering if that might have been the way it was.
Yeah.
And so that's all. We'll cut back. Like there was a time where you were a timber cruiser in Montana, weren't you?
I had a friend that did that and would help. Yeah, I would go out with him, and yeah. I
wonder if any of the trees you were working on later in Maine were trees from that you ever marked.
I might have wrapped a tape around them. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. It would be interesting to know.
Sorry, old friend. Yeah.
You thought I was just giving you a hug. It was a kiss of death.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of where I was, and then. We had some friends with draft horses there. I'd watch a farrier come. Those shoes were going in the forge, and I was watching it for the first time, thinking, and he was talking about, like it's just weird to think that, like that anybody, and I say this because I did it, but that anybody would nail a shoe on a horse without. I couldn't even tell you what bone was in the foot. You know what I mean? I just knew the nails. Like, I knew if the horse jerked and it bled, I should leave that nail out. And that happened a lot on the toenails because there's like a box of Otts went on every foot. Some of those horses had size 2 feet.
Yeah.
So, diamond toe and heel, open it up, slide it back, you're good to go.
Sometimes that's the way it gets done from some.
Yeah, that's the reason a cowboy shoe, and you see him using the back of the nails, like the back three. Those are the safe ones. Those are.
And those that the climate, it's amazing how it affects feet. So, in that part of Montana was a little greener than the east side, but still, like after June, you couldn't knife feet.
Yeah,
they were rock hard, and that's the only reason I think those horses tolerated it. They were,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right.
They had rocks for feet already. It didn't really matter too much.
No, I couldn't do it here. Yeah,
They fall apart.
yeah, they'd be crippled. Well, I mean, we shot them with sole pressure. They just rasped right straight across the sole and nailed the whole works on.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is like when I first started, like just team rope and shoeing was we just rasped flat everything.
Yeah.
Frog, sole, everything went flat. You just nailed onto that bad dog.
Yeah, in your rope horses, it's really important to short shoe them too. You know, like you need the heels, like
So
they got to be at least an inch forward so they don't step them off when you turn your steer.
God,
Yeah,
God forbid you take them down any.
When you dump his shoulder on the ground.
Yeah.
Oh. So where did you like ever get some formal training?
So I attempted to go to a farrier school. So this is after now the internet's around. So this would have been 2000 somewhere, 2001. Yeah, so the internet's still slow dial-up deal, but you could get on it at the library, and so I looked for horseshoeing schools, and not knowing anything about schools or having anybody to talk to for guidance. So I found a school with the nicest website, which was the East Coast Farrier School. It was in north of Raleigh, North Carolina. It's not there anymore. I don't know what happened to the owner, but it was like they had a really nice website, and it said hot, cold, corrective, therapeutic. You're going to learn all this stuff in, I think it was a 6-week course. And I was only there 2 weeks, and all we did was drive around in an old ambulance and shoe broncs in the pasture. And I already knew how to do that. You know, so I kept complaining, you know, when are we going to forge, or, you know, are we going to talk about anatomy? And so he finally got, I think he was tired of me, and he said, you know, you don't really need to be here. And so he refunded my money for
No kidding.
the rest of it, and I left with about 2 weeks of training, or might have been more than that, I don't remember. But so then I met another retired farrier in Maine. He was an incredible artist blacksmith too. His name's Ed Groves. He's in his 90s now. But Ed was one of the charter members of the Michigan Horseshoers Association before he moved back to Maine to retire. And he was telling me about the Michigan Horseshoers Association. He was the first one that really was telling me about this world that I didn't know existed yet. Mm-hmm. And so he knew Dick Becker, and it was Ed that said, if you're moving back, if you go back to Michigan, or if you're going to move back there, you get a hold of Ed Groves or get a hold of Dick Becker. And so I called Dick and asked if I could apprentice with him, and he took me on. So that was really Dick really was the bulk of any kind of formal training I had. And then anatomy, the rest of that stuff was studying. And then the studying, you know, you're pushed to do that, really just getting ready for certification. So,
and I was going to say, at that time, when you started riding with Dick, was he competing pretty hot and heavy and everything?
Yeah, the year that I started with him was the first year he was on the team, I believe. And then he made a team again the next year. Yeah, following year.
How long did you get to work with him?
I worked with him, I think I worked with him about 3-4 days a week for about 2 years. And then kind of slowly started. He was starting to feed me client horses, you know, his overflow. And then it just kind of phased out until that last, year or so. I might work with him once a month or a couple times a month, something like that. But one of my biggest regrets was that I ever stopped. That I even wanted to pursue my own business, because he paid me really well, and all I had to do was put my box in his truck, And then
Show
at
up.
the end of the day, I took my box out, and that was my phone didn't ring. I didn't have to order any supplies. I didn't have to worry about a lost shoe. It was like if I could go back and do it all over, I'd still be working for him.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You enjoyed it that much.
He was awesome to work for. It was like every day was fun. Never felt like work.
But you were still learning and
was he
gaining.
like? I was gonna say, was he like slipping in a lot of lessons in there?
Oh yeah, I mean that was the cool thing about working with Dick is like he had a vested interest in you getting better.
That's cool.
And so now like since I got to the point eventually where I took on my own apprentices, and I realized that there's motivation in doing that as a mentor because the more they know, they're just handier, right? They make your job easier. But but that teaching process always slows you down. And that was the nice thing about Dick was you never felt like he was put out or, well, okay, I got to take an extra 5 minutes to show you this. Like he enjoyed that part of the job. Like he took a lot of pride in watching all of us get better.
Yeah.
And he's humble about that. I don't think he brags. I know he's proud of a lot of the guys that he's helped through the years, but like he doesn't always. He's not sitting back going, "That's because of me." You know what I mean? Like he gives us our due credit too.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's huge. Did you get your certified while you were working for him in those 2 years?
Yeah, I got certified. I think the first year I was with him, and then it wasn't even a year out because as soon as I finished the certified, I started. It was only about a month later I started the journeyman. So
Okay.
I got that whole thing done probably in less than 2 years. Yeah. So
Probably helped a lot having Dick there to help guide you through that process and help you out through it.
oh yeah, I mean at the time he was an examiner too. So every foot I trimmed, like to him it was a score. So and so he would score my trim, he'd force me to score it, and then the same with fit, nail up, finish, to the point where when I went to take my certification, I knew the score sheet by heart, and so I was never spinning my wheels, like I could score myself pretty accurately too. So if I looked down and said, I got I'm not really happy with flat on this foot, I got a 6, but I'm already 2 minutes into trimming this foot, so I'm going to take my 6 and I'm going to move on, right? So, because that's the thing with that test is time. The biggest thing is time management and then choosing your points, right? So I mean, you can take a 4 if you know you got a 10 coming later in the score sheet. Take your 4 and nail up and get done, right?
Take your licks.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And I didn't compete. I did compete enough to apply that a little bit in my competing too. So I would learn what I could take some lumps on and what I wanted to save time for rasping or different things like that. But I never competed at the level that Dick did or a lot of you other guys do. But so in those two processes go together. I think it's great what Craig has done with the competing industry, and it'd be really kind of neat to see statistics on the people that have competed heavily on the local level or even through the WCB, and how much faster, how much easier it is for them to go through the certification process.
I think it'd be very interesting to see.
It'd be some cool data. Yeah.
It would be, yeah. I think that would be. I never thought about that of seeing if there was a correlation of it, but it's like I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure. And it'd also be interesting to see if there was an increase in people taking the certification after the WCB has been like kicking off. Because it seems like there's a lot of people, like especially novice people, that are in the WCB, but they haven't yet take their certification yet. Like that, I wonder
Or
if
vice
it
versa.
drives them. Yeah, it drives them to go do it. One or the other.
Yeah, well, the cool thing about Craig is like even through this whole endeavor, and I mean he's built an enterprise, and it's one he can be really proud of. But he's still a big supporter of the AFA and the certification, and like just the whole continuing ed deal, and it's.
No, that is true. Yeah, he is still for. I mean, American horseshoers. Like he just wants us as a whole to be doing better, be getting further. So how long were you shoeing horses on your own before you got the gig to Iowa? And like what kind of change was that?
So it was probably about 12 years. I shot on my own. 10,
in Michigan.
10, 12 years. Yeah, it's kind of hard to put an exact number on it because I can't really remember like exactly when I quit working for Dick. Like I said, it was kind of this phasing thing, but it's 10 to 12 years somewhere in there. And I never even would have considered a job at a university. Never. It's just it wasn't something that I would have thought of and said no, I don't want to do that. It's just it never even occurred to me to work at one.
Right. Well, no, because you're in a super unique position as far as horseshoers go, that you pretty much work a 9 to 5, and you have a set amount of money you're going to make that year. It's like compared to most of us are like, I don't even know what I'm going to do next week. Yeah. Like just like
hopefully I'll get fired
wandering.
Or
or you don't know when you're going to be done for the day.
Yeah. So that part of it's nice, right? I don't take that for granted. I'll tell you, I'll be like, honestly, I miss shoeing sound horses. And I get so few of those that I have got a handful of really nice horses that come in just for routine work, but and when they come in, it's like a vacation, but
I bet.
But I do I love the catastrophic stuff. I just put a horse in a patent bar shoe yesterday, and it was like in 12, 15 years of shoeing before Iowa State, I never did a patent bar, a hospital plate, it's like, so that sort of stuff, that's what I've really grown to love. And unfortunately, what also comes with that at a referral center like ours, or a big equine hospital, is just neglect cases. So and that's it's just amazing that these people have horses they've owned for years, and the thing is finally he's been so lame for the past 4 months. They wait 4 months before they even bring him in. That's what the other weird thing is. They tell you, well, he's been how long has he not been able to walk at all? It started about 4 weeks ago. It's like
We're going to see if he dies first before we got here.
So we had to roll him into the trailer. Yes. So they come in, and the horse just has feet that long, right? And so instead of making an appointment with the farrier, they take the horse in for a lameness exam. So by the end of the day, a lameness exam, if they shoot X-rays, block the feet, you could easily have $400 or $500 into that. That would have bought you 2 years worth of trims.
Yeah,
year and a half worth of trims. Yeah. So.
Oh, well, okay. So let's get how did it come about to you? You weren't even living in this state when you got the offer, huh?
No. So they had because they have a part of what I do there is I teach a 2-week clinical rotation for 4th-year vet students, and they had the idea of starting that before I got there. They were trying to get it going, and then the farrier that was before me got injured, and so that was when they were looking for somebody else. So they wanted somebody with some teaching experience, and briefly. the AFA was teamed up. This was years ago. We were teamed up with the American Association of Equine Practitioners, and they would send a vet and a farrier out to a university, and we would do a one-day vet farrier short course. And I had taught a few of those. And so I was recommended, or they said he's got some teaching experience, which really wasn't like I didn't have any. But
Yeah.
so when I first talked to him, I really didn't want the job. And then I thought about it later. So my back was giving me problems. I'd had a hip surgery, I had shoulder surgery. There was other things starting to fall apart, and so so I called and talked to him more about it. And then my wife and I drove down and check it out. And I was up front with him. I told him I'm on the downhill side of this whole deal. If you're looking for an animal that's going to shoe 15 head a day, I'm not your guy. Yeah, I don't want it. And they said, yeah, like a lot of days it'd be one or two horses, and then the big part of it is you're using those horses to teach the vet students that are with you for the 2-week rotation. So that part of it really turned out to be my most favorite part of the job. I love working with the vet students. And
why so?
So it's like you're rocking their world, right? So you guys would not believe what they don't know coming out of vet school as it pertains to podiatry and shoeing horses.
Because by the time you get a hold of them, they've been learning for a while, correct?
Yeah, so I don't get them till the way vet school works is your first 3 years are all your lecture, labs, mostly classroom work. When you get to your 4th year, you go, at Iowa State anyway, you go from May to May. You don't get any winter break or summer break. And in that whole year is spent in either externships or 2-week clinical rotations in the hospitals. So there's a small animal, large animal hospital. And then depending on how those students want to track, they'll choose elective rotations that are going to support what so the students I have, they're going to do equine. They're going to practice equine or mixed large animal, something like that. But so they have at Iowa State, they get about 1 hour of equine distal limb anatomy their first year of vet school. Yeah, it's and I'm more sympathetic.
We've almost been talking an hour right now.
Yeah.
Like it's just like nothing.
So, it helped me a lot because the frustration that all of us experience with veterinarians at some point or the other, and I started realizing that it's not really their fault, and it's almost like I was 30 years ago where I didn't know what I didn't know, right? Like I didn't even know there was another world out there. They're in the same boat. So, and there's very few universities with vet schools that have farriers that actually interact in some way with the vet students. And I think those universities are going to, I already know we're having a huge impact. I'll get reports back from farriers in Oklahoma or different places. Hey, I worked with this Iowa State grad, and the first thing they told me was, I'm not going to tell you how to shoe this horse. I learned from Doug Russo. It's like, nice. Yeah. One thing I can teach them in 2 weeks is how much they don't know and how much they have to trust us and develop a professional working relationship. And it's like, and then, we do review anatomy and different shoeing philosophies for lameness or different things like that. But, the one thing I try to really beat into them is that if you can't work with the farrier, like the local farriers, you're destined for doom. And I think all of us have that story about a vet in our area that can't get a farrier to work for him anymore because we've been run over by that bus 2 or 3 times. So their prognosis for those vets is poor. right? How do they treat lameness without a farrier? They can't do it, right? So they just have a bunch of pissed off clients all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm sorry your horse is still lame.
Do you have them you have them 10 days total then? Like 5 days for 2 weeks?
I don't. So technically I could get called in, and if I did, my students would come in with me if we had. That seldom happens where a horse can't wait for me to get there to the next day if it comes
like
in on
Saturday
emergency
or Sunday type thing.
Yeah, once in a while it happens, but yeah. So the students are with me Monday through Friday. The way the day works is they go to rounds in the hospital, so they look at all the hospital cases that are in, and they discuss those. Then they come back to the shop, and we spend another hour they call rounding, which is we're talking about cases in the hospital, or we're talking about anatomy or other different pathologies that we chew for. We basically have a discussion for another hour, and then our first horses are coming in around 9:30. So the only thing I can really get them to do practically is pull shoes. Right?
At this point.
I'd just be making them really dangerous if I tried to teach them any more than that in a 2 week time frame. But
And then how many students are kind of like with you each time? Or does it vary?
It varies. Yeah, so I have on occasion as many as 5. On average, I have 3.
Oh, okay.
So what's the really fun thing is, like, day 1, I give them an old shoe and show them how to make a hoof pick. So that, like, the other big eye opener for them is, like, number 1, when they're discussing anatomy with me, they think like I'm some sort of like anatomy god. You know, like they've never talked to anybody that understands anatomy, and I'm not that good. You know, like as far as anatomy goes, I feel like a poser. You know, like I got my associates and I've passed some higher exams, and everybody's like, "Oh, you got to call Doug." And then usually when people call me, they don't know that I'm looking at a book while I'm talking to them, because everything that I wish I was that guy that could retain it, but I don't. I retain what I teach. And so that's another advantage of being in that job, is if I want to get better at, let's say, musculature through the hind end or something like that, I add it to my discussion. And then if after I teach it for 3 or 4 weeks, I start to recall it or memorize it better. But
so it's like
anyway,
repetition then at that point.
Yeah.
It's almost the same as like making a horseshoe.
Yeah, so like anything you want to get really good at, teach it.
Yeah.
Start teaching it. But so anyway, I get them in the forge, and man, they're like their hands are blistered like after 5 minutes, and they keep dropping the steel, and they're getting the slag burning them, and so they realize, like, in that first 5 minutes of forging and trying to pull a shoe, that we make
It's
our
tough.
job look pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so they don't come up to you anymore and say, "Can you slip that shoe off?" Because they now they know it's not like, yeah, it looks like we slip it off, but it ain't that easy. There's some technique.
Yeah. No, that is great.
Good point.
And they're watching you probably make shoes for these horses.
Yeah.
And so they're getting how hard it is to, like, you don't just throw a heart bar on that thing.
Yeah. No. Yeah, and and I like that. So it's interesting how different a lot of the industry is, especially like in my end of the industry with the university farriers or the farriers that work for big referral hospitals. I like to forge. So I you know, like, and it's funny that people will call and they'll want me to do a clinic on gluing shoes. And like, you don't want to watch me glue a shoe. Yeah.
Call Travis Burns.
Yeah.
You gotta call Travis.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I look like a monkey humping a football. There's glue. I got glue on my face. It's on the floor. The horse steps out of it. You watch Travis, it's like you just watched a ballet. I mean, I feel emotional when he's done. But
Crying.
yeah, I do. It's moving. But so but that's another really cool thing about our industry is that like that, and I try to teach the students that there's a whole bunch of different ways you can skin a cat. Yeah, and so if you try to force me to glue a shoe for your laminitic horse, you're not going to get the best outcome from me. But if you let me cast a heart bar or do something that I'm used to doing, the prognosis just got better.
Yeah.
So I try to tell my students that, like, you got to see me do this stuff for 2 weeks. You know what my preferred methods are. Now, don't go out there and start pigeonholing farriers, telling them, well, I want you to do this just because Doug Russo did. You know.
Oh, yeah. Just because they're not able to do.
No, they don't. But they probably, and the other thing is, they know that they have a relationship with that horse that I don't have.
Oh, I see it all the time, right?
Yeah, like that's a disadvantage of being at the university. But like when you're out in the field like you guys are, they got woven wire fences in the back 80 pasture. Horses at the bottom of the pecking order. They feed them on a round pail. It's really muddy up by the water tank. All those things affect the package you put on the horse. You're trying to work around all these like external environmental influences, and so to have somebody sweep in and say I want an egg bar on them, well, you're going to be back there every other day to nail the egg bar on, right? So it's like
I see.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, and I think like that's the difference between some really good vets is the really good vets read the situation really quickly of like, this is where this farrier is at in his life, and I'm not going to like feed him something or recommend it to his client to make him look bad. Like they're going to recommend something they know that he can do, and hopefully it can get pulled off. Like not pulled off, but like he can pull the job off and make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the other part of that's owner compliance.
Right.
So you got that awfully laminitic horse, he'd love to have a shoe on. But if he isn't going to get reset till like 8 months later, he's better off, like he's got a fighting chance being barefoot.
Yep.
Yeah.
So those are the clients that you end up talking them out of the shoe because the horse is going to be better off in the long run.
Without it.
Yeah. So, those like, it's amazing all these little things you never consider when you're getting going, and then when you get into the different areas where we all live, the different kinds of horses we work on, it's amazing that we still always want to fight on Facebook, right? Like,
Oh my God.
yeah, it's like there's like one picture on an angle from 4 feet away, and there's like 500 different opinions, and then
It's just egos, man.
yeah.
People's egos get in the way.
Oh, it's like none of us talking like we don't socialize enough. We're all fucking riding around our pickup, like not talking to anybody. And then all of a sudden, somebody posted like, "Finally, I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna tell everybody how much I know." I've been waiting all day to tell somebody how much I know. Here I come.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Well,
I think that was good. Of like, I got to go out to Iowa last year. I think that was last year, and you guys do that little contest, and the vet students are involved there.
Oh.
And so like you guys did a class where they're presented a dead foot and a injury, and they have to make like a backstory on it and then help the farrier come up with a plan, and then they get as a team going. The farrier makes the shoe and everything and then what was it? The vet has to nail it and clinch?
The vets have to punch and pritchel the shoe and then nail up and clinch. Yeah. So
and the backstories those vet students came up with was amazing.
Yeah. So it's like that whole experiment. It's basically a giant wet lab, but we were the first I know of to actually incorporate it into a competition setting, and the vet students loved it. So what I was trying to do when we brainstormed this was what farriers are traditionally really bad at is is defending their work, right? So you questioned on your shoe, and you're already pissed off, and you put your hands on your hip and tell them to hire somebody else if they don't like it, right? And then also giving a case history. So we want professional recognitions from veterinarians, but we don't often supply them with the same information we'd like them to give us, right? Like, we want a phone call. Well, if we know a horse is going to the vet and we call that vet up and say, hey, let me tell you what's been going on with this horse for the last 6 months, I guarantee if you do that, you're going to blow their mind. So you're going to give them all kinds of useful information going into that situation that they didn't have before. And you're going to be the first one that they call back after they figure out what the problem was. So
No, but because it does almost seem like when you tell them that stuff afterwards, it seems like you're defensive.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That is a really good point. But like I'm guilty as hell. I never think to call them and be
So-
like, oh hey, just letting you know.
Well, in our owners don't think to do it either. I think we all need to start a policy with our owners, and I did with mine. But like even before I was at Iowa State, I told him, like, your horse's feet, that's my department. If he's lame, you got to call me if he's lame. And it doesn't mean I'm going to come out and fix the lameness, but I need to know he's lame, and then that allows you then. So if your clients do that, they call you up and say, I just made a vet appointment with such and such. He's coming out on Thursday or whatever. Then you say, I need that vet's number. And you call and tell him, hey, this horse has been stumbling for the last 2 years. Did well in pads. Maybe a solar margin view would be helpful. I suspect he's got some pedal osteitis going on. Like, already you started this back and forth communication. You help the vet kind of narrow in his lameness exam because you've given him some clues as to what's been happening and how this has been progressing. And then, like, that whole teamwork thing starts there, as opposed to us just getting pissed because they left a shoeing prescription.
Well, no, because it does almost seem like a lot of times, like I've had clients do this, like they all of a sudden like slip to you that they called the vet, like they were trying to hide it from you. They're like, well, I did take him to the vet. Like, it's like, I didn't even know anything was wrong with the guy. Like, I thought he was going good. Like, no, that is a good idea to do, but it is like we are. Why do you think we're so horrible at talking to vets?
I don't know. I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with a lot of what Walt envisioned as a future for our industry. And I think that a part of it's the nature of the people who are attracted to our trade, like independent, free thinkers, very mechanically minded. And so probably the hardest thing for us to train ourselves to do are those things we just talked about. So it's getting out of our comfort zone, not our world for that moment isn't going to revolve around ourselves and the dog sitting in the pickup next to us. We got to actually work on a team to achieve something. So
yeah. That transitions. I'm trying to work on my transitions a little bit, so this is a little bit smoother. That you are pretty involved with the AFA right now, still. Like it's still been a pretty big part through your whole career, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So what's your role in AFA currently?
So I am chair of the research committee. I assist Travis with therapeutic endorsement, so I'd be an examiner on the therapeutic endorsement test. I'm an examiner for the AFA, a certification instructor, and then recently with the launch of the American Farriers Association Foundation, that was probably the biggest trick ever. Was they asked me to be on the board strictly as an advisory position, and then after our first meeting I was president.
What is the foundation?
Thank you guys. The foundation is I think it's the next best chapter for the AFA. So it basically, the foundation is an endowment fund, and we're years late in getting this going, but it's off to a good start. The point of it was that, so there's different types of nonprofit tax designated entities, right? So the AFA by law has to make the majority of its money through the membership fees, right? So that's and so there's restrictions. Like if we had a wealthy widow of a farrier pass away and leave her entire estate that's worth $2 million, the AFA technically couldn't accept that donation.
Oh,
So that was the big driver behind starting the foundation, was to have a tax entity that could accept those donations, but then not only would accept them, but then invest and manage the money, and try to basically fundraise. So you guys have all been called by endowment funds at some point, PBS or who knows what, but
it's the first time ever hearing of what an endowment fund is. So that's kind of a dummy. So
well, I mean that's.
It's not the same thing as being well endowed.
Yeah.
Different.
It's probably good that you clarified that, right? So he was feeling really inadequate just about that. So anyway, we've already raised like over 160,000. The AFA pitched in a big chunk of that.
nice.
But so then what the idea is that as that money grows, we basically live off the interest. And then we're able to fund all kinds of cool stuff. More hoof-related research, education. We look at I just lost my train of thought with the education end of it. Anyhow, basically the sky's the limit. Right now, one of our biggest goals, the AFA has just lost its office after renting in the horse park for 30 years. They're giving us the boot. So we're looking at trying to raise funds so that the AFA can buy some land, have a brick and mortar facility. Same thing, and then like the sky's the limit there. I mean, that could be a 100-acre place with a big pool, like a huge indoor arena where we host competitions and events and continuing ed certifications. I mean, I think so our job really on the foundation is to think big and then raise the money to do it. But we exist for the AFA. I mean, that if the AFA went away tomorrow, we would too.
Foundation.
Yeah.
So it is a separate deal, pretty much, though, from the AFA.
Yeah, it's called the American Farriers Association Foundation.
AFAF.
AFAF. Yeah.
How many people are on the board for that?
There's myself as president, Travis Burns as vice president, Tim Bryan as treasurer, Tom Du Bois as secretary, and then Eric Gilland as a board member, and then Martha Jones, who's executive director of the AFA, has been very active in helping us getting this going. So she's on all the meetings with us, and then Hank Chisholm as the AFA president would be like a non-voting board member with the foundation. So he's always on those meetings too.
I see.
Yeah.
But so even though it is a separate entity from the AFA can accept the donations from it?
Basically we would fund it. So the research fund that I managed up until we created the foundation, that the AFA managed that fund. Once the foundation was created, I moved the fund over to the management of the foundation, but the fund is still controlled by the AFA and whoever's in charge of that
Department.
So like if I want to pull the money at any point, that money's still part of the research fund, right?
Yeah.
It's just actively invested. And then if you go on that we have a website, if you go on there to make a donation, you can choose the different areas you'd like to donate to. So whether it's philanthropy, research, different things like that, and then that money will be earmarked for those ventures.
I wish we could do that with our taxes that we pay.
Yeah.
Dictate where they go.
Yeah.
Well, so like our friend Brian just did a research project for it.
Yeah.
Strelo.
Yeah, Brian Strelo. I don't know. I just figured everybody knew what I was talking about. But
is this your invisible friend?
Yeah, I keep him in the closet. How does a person go about, like, if they were interested in doing a research project for this? How would they go about doing it, and what are the nitty-gritties of it?
So the research committee, we set it up so that you would what we're trying to do is get farriers actively involved in research. And so, Brian applied for a grant through the research committee, and then we helped fund his project. But so what we want to do is so you guys are you familiar with a peer-reviewed process in research, or
a little bit, but not just run it down as like we probably don't know.
Yeah,
probably don't.
So to really simplify it, like just to write something doesn't necessarily validate it. So the way the peer review research process works is you write your research paper, but there's standards that have been met through the research process, and then your paper then goes to a group of peers who read it and evaluate it. And what they want to determine is that if they did your research project, or if they did the same research that you did based on your explanation, they would get the exact same results. So it's basically you've just written directions, basically, or a roadmap. And so they then determine whether or not it's really worthy to be published.
Are they doing that just off of like their thoughts, or like in Brian's case, Brian had I'm going to generalize it, but like if it made a difference during X-rays if the horse is on one block or two blocks, or stuff like that. So like when he sent in the peer review, did a guy have to go and do that same research, or did he just have to like, well, I think that would work? The
cool thing about it is that a lot of times your peer reviewed. Your peers that are reviewing these, they don't even have to be horseshoers. They could be like a molecular scientist somewhere on a whole different level or a whole different deal. But what they're looking at is the directions that you wrote for your process, and can it be duplicated? So are there holes in it? And actually what we're finding is that a lot of times having peers that review it that are not in the industry are better, because they already have preconceived ideas of what outcomes should be, and so it can sometimes be an unfair process. Anyway, the goal with the committee was to actually get farriers involved in the scientific community, which would give us a lot of professional recognition. So historically, most of the stuff that we read that is called research fairly loosely a lot of times was conducted by veterinarians, and they had no input from farriers. So they're talking about treating lameness with the shoe and how effective it is, and they saw this, 80% of the horses responded positively, blah, blah, blah. But then you read their paper, and they never even described what kind of trim they laid down or what kind of fit the shoe had. Right? So if I tried to do what they did, I wouldn't get the same results, because I'd be starting off, number one, with a different trim, different shoe fit, so
had no control.
No controls, right? So
that makes a ton of sense. So it's like, so a part of your job is your job finding these peers, these like peer review people?
No, you send them off to get published. So depending on whichever company is going to publish your paper that you send it to, they have their own peer review panelists or whatever that they would have read it. It's not uncommon for them to send it back and they want revisions or explanations or
really.
Yeah, it's sometimes a brutal and painful process to go through.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds pretty drawn out, especially in today's day and age where we just want to be like, I'm done, here it is,
Yeah.
give me grace for it. Where
Yeah.
you have to like keep getting your boot in your mouth a couple more times before it's going to be any good for you. So how many of these projects get accepted every year, and like how many have you guys done so far?
I believe we're at 6 right now. And there's several of them that are in the writing process right now. None of them. Travis would be the closest to being published on one of the projects that we helped him with. So it's like I'm passionate about it. I think it's a big thing. I think it's going to move us forward. And what the farriers have to understand is you don't have to be an academic to do it. Like if you have an idea like Brian did, that was a very simple experiment, but it was well needed, right? Like that's a big eye-opening thing. Loaded versus unloaded. What's it do to the limb? And so that you might think is not going to be a huge contribution to science, but if it's established and proven, that will now be referenced in all kinds of scientific papers going down the road. So it's laid a platform out for future scientists. Okay, well, I know if I load this limb, this are the results, so I don't have to repeat that in my research. So that simple little project that Brian did could have a huge impact on the industry over the next 40, 50 years.
So what's
Super
the
cool,
plan
Brian.
what's the plan with these writings, with these projects after they're done? How are we going to get these out to people?
So we have all of our grant recipients speak at conventions, so they talk about their projects as they're ongoing, where they're at, the scientific process, writing, all that sort of things. Once they're published, they'll be available to all the AFA membership to read those papers. They go into, like if you go on the internet, you can go on to PubMed or Google Scholar, and you can type in keywords, and that'll bring up scientific research that's been done with, like, so if you put laminitis, equine laminitis. So once those papers are published, our authors on those papers would show up in those places, like on PubMed and Google Scholar.
Is that different than versus just going to regular Google and typing in laminitis and you get all this random shit, basically, which is what most horse owners are going to type in?
Yeah.
And be like, oh my God, but they see all these different random things that may not necessarily be accurate.
No, yeah.
Google Scholar better?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's only going to pull up papers that have been peer reviewed or
is Google Scholar free?
Well, you can get what they call the abstract, which is like a shortened version of it. If you want the paper, you'd have to pay for it then. But that is going forward. That's something that we want to have as a member benefit for the AFA, so our members have access to those papers for free.
Oh, I see.
I see that. I'll just play the devil's advocate here a little bit though, but it's like if we keep charging people for these, then they won't get out to the horse owner, and they won't get out to as many vets. I would think. I would think these they won't ever leave our circle.
The vets will be the main audience. So the horse owners, like even if you search, like Gavin was saying, if you did a search for equine laminitis just on Google, it might still bring up those scientific papers. But the best thing to do is to write a recap on it that's published in, American Farriers Journal or something like that, and then in that recap then is just talking about the research that you did. And those things come out in the No Foot, No Horse. When we get ours published, we talk about them in the No Foot, No Horse as well. But the biggest impact that this is going to have on the industry is that That's where veterinarians go when they want information. They go to PubMed or Google Scholar. And then that therein lies the problem, is that most of the research that they're reading then is either done by a company that's selling a product or a veterinarian that's already got some built-in bias or doesn't have the skill to talk about the trim or other things like that. So we need to be a part of it.
I see.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, is that it won't get out. You know, it's like knife makers just going to knife shows to sell their knives. That's probably a pretty stupid idea. You might want to go to a cooking show. You might, or a trade show where I think like we do that bad as horseshoers. We just keep on spitting it back at each other instead of like, well, we probably should, like you going out to the practitioner deal and meeting with these vets. That's probably where we should be doing these speaks, not at like it's probably good to do it at a convention as well, but
it's almost to the point where we have so much information at our fingertips that we're like with the foundation. This has been around over a year. Like we've had several articles in No Foot No Horse where we've been mentioned in the E-Blast over and over again.
Yep.
But like Farriers, we all have our own little areas of interest, right? And we kind of hover there.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of people that just don't know about stuff yet. I mean, so
I'm certainly guilty of that myself.
Yeah. So I mean, that was like, as we're getting the news out for the foundation, it's like everybody that I tell about it, they're like, you should write something in No Foot No Horse. It's like, well, we did twice. Go find one of your back issues. That second one down next to your toilet. It's in there. So,
well, I'm glad that we can kind of help get the word out there for you then.
Yeah.
For the foundation itself. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is somewhere where like I could say that pretty like for sure that AFA is way behind it, and like not saying just foundation. AFA as a whole is not on social media.
Yeah.
It's sucking in that department, man. You guys aren't like not trying to call you out too much, but call a spade a spade. It's not doing very good compared to other things in life. Like most associations they got an Instagram that's super active. They got a social media thing going. It's like it's hard, but that's where everybody gets their information right now. It's the quickest and easiest freaking way to see it, and it just shows up in your Rolodex, and you got to look at the damn thing.
Yeah, and I'll admit I'm not good at it. I've got a large animal, like a Iowa State Large Animal Hospital veterinarian Facebook page. I probably haven't posted on there in two years. Like I just don't. I wasn't really part of that generation that thinks to do it. It's like it's like after the horse is gone. I should have got a picture of that. Put something up, but.
Oh, it's a whole nother job. It is.
And you get gun shy on that too after a while, because like I said, you try to post something that you think might be useful or educational, and you get torn a new butthole by the end of the day.
They run you down, don't they?
Yeah.
The fuckers are always there. Fuck, they're always there. But you know what? Yeah. You gotta throw it in their face, and not even try to throw it in their face. Is like. You got to kick the hornet's nest every once in a while, or just post what you're doing, or it's like everybody's quiet.
Yeah.
And everybody's quiet. Well, nothing's getting talked about. Nothing's getting stirred. It's like I made a post not that long. It's just like a post of talking about being a judge and how it sucks and how you want to try to make a perfect shoe. Well, that post got like a bunch of wrath on it about like guys talk and like, well, it's hard as the poster to feel like they're not talking about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like most people in that post were very good. They were just talking about in general, about competitions in general. So I'm not taking offense to that. And it's like, well, it's hard sometimes as a poster to be like, no, they're just talking about everything, not me. Not everything's about you. Like it's kind of hard to remember that though. Social media is a fucked up place.
Well, but they're like when you post a picture of a shoe, there still is always probably half the people on there that do say you suck. Or what were you thinking? Or and it's like I said, I just got off most of those, like vet to Farrier to Farrier. It was like, this is the biggest waste of my time. that I don't get back. I could do something. I could do something productive in this amount of time.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, they don't think about the fact that we live in different places. We work on different horses. They don't know the situation the horse is in.
And we're all evolving at different stages in our career as well. Within our abilities. People don't necessarily take that into consideration as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I kind of went on a little side turn there. Sorry about that. So, do you plan on finishing your career off then pretty much at Iowa?
I don't think I'll leave here. Yeah, it's I got one more kid left in high school, 3 more years for him. Never thought I would live in Iowa.
Yeah.
But you
got a cool little spot there though.
Yeah.
You aren't very far from the university, but man, your spot feels like it's in a different world.
Yeah, it's pretty remote. We don't have any neighbors.
You have trees.
That's perfect.
Trees, yeah. We're surrounded.
you got trees.
Yeah, I wouldn't think there would be a lot of trees in Iowa.
No.
There's not. And
there's
a lot
not,
of the places.
No, we got a cool spot. But, I like the people here. The politics are good. I get, the folks are nice. And, I always thought my goal would have been to go back to Montana where I used to live, but the Flathead Valley's it's a big city now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even want to go. I don't even know the people there anymore. They're not the kind of people that used to be there.
It's a vacation spot nowadays.
Yeah. So I the more I see that change, the better it looks here. Just stay here and take my trip to the mountains.
Are the winter's pretty harsh there as well, right?
Yeah.
Kinda like
all our
North
snow
Dakota
comes
area.
down sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say. Yeah.
That's something else I've always kind of wondered, with winters like that, what is it like shoeing in the winter there? I guess you're probably not the best ass of not going out shoeing day to day, but is it still change much for you at the university?
I'm just slow.
No, I mean, does the number of horses change, coming into the university, when it gets real cold out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we don't get near the caseload.
Oh,
I think pretty much, here in Iowa, I think most people forget they own a horse until the first 60-degree day. And
they
then
want to go ride it?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the farriers here struggle through the winter.
Mm-hmm.
It's...
Try to find another job or something like that.
Not a lot. I think a lot of them stay busy enough trimming, but there's not as many horses. Like in Michigan area, there was a lot of high-end dressage horses, and those horses got winter packages.
Oh yeah,
and
see.
And those were expensive. Getting a winter package, and the horse was still done every 6 weeks all winter, so it was pretty good.
Yep.
But we don't have a lot of those clients around here.
What is the average stay for a horse that comes into you said they live there basically, are some of them there for a month, or some of them for a year, a week?
Yeah, so, we're like a regular human hospital. We have a isolation ward, we have a IC intensive care unit. We've got therio doctors, so they take care of all the equine breeding. Medicine doctors take care of all your infectious diseases, Potomac horse fever, all that kind of stuff. Surgery team, that's everything else, colic surgery, orthopedic surgery, all that sort of stuff. So we have had horses come in with, fractured legs, different things like that might be at the hospital for a month. I'd say on average, most of those that come in for surgery might be there 2-3 days before they go home. But,
okay, I see.
Yeah.
You have any horror stories? Can you think of one off the top of your head that was just oh my god, I can't believe I'm having to do this?
Oh yeah, so a lot of it's just the amount of pus and blood. It's you never think about that. I got pus on my face. It's but yeah, so many abscesses and rotten coffin bones, bone sequestrums, sort of stuff. And I still, like 10 years into this, I never think to put rubber gloves on. Like there's latex gloves everywhere in the hospital, and I never put them on till my hands smell like an abscess. You know what I'm saying?
Now it's just trapped on your hand.
Yeah.
At that point.
So,
That's the worst.
yeah.
I'm just not the guy that wears gloves ever. I'm always kind of like, I'll just be in there for a second. It'll be, and now you're like, a second too long. Too long completely. Yeah. So what are your plans with AFA? Do you plan on staying where you're at with it, or?
I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I'd like to turn the reins over on the research thing eventually. You know, I always say I don't want any more jobs, and I always end up taking more jobs. But I mean, really, what the AFA has done for me has allowed me to help, right? So, like, the more that I got involved and volunteered, the better I got in all different kinds of ways. Yeah. You know, so those folks they drive me nuts. There's always like some farrier every year at the general membership meeting at the convention who wants to take the mic and say, what has the AFA done for me? You know, what am I getting for my dues? Yeah. It's like, well, nothing, because you haven't done it. It's not a country club. You know, it's a membership to an association. It allows you to participate. You know, so, and the people that participate are the ones that get ahead. But
yeah, we're here for continuing education.
Yeah.
You know, not
so do you plan
beer.
on? Like, it seems like you're a type of guy that you kind of get things going where you want them to go, and then you'll start going on to something new a little bit too. You know, like, so you get the foundation going where you're going. Is there things in the main AFA that you would like to head into to try to make those times better? To like put your time into the main?
Yeah, I mean, so I just came on as an examiner. I had been a tester for a long time, so. I think that the certification instructor deal and the examiner are two more newer things that I've been involved with. I don't know what the next thing will be. Like, I'm still kind of learning the ropes there, and the examiner position, I'll tell you, is it's a load of responsibility. It's so easy. It wasn't that long ago that I saw some more negative posts about certification, and I don't think people realize like the blood, sweat, and tears that a lot of people have put into that process, and still, like, you don't really realize it till you're a part of that committee and you see those that they've met for the last 3 days, and they've got hours every day into discussing this stuff and trying to make the whole process better. And it's always evolving, it's changing, but I can honestly say that in the 20 years that I've been a part of the AFA, it's always gotten better, right? So like there's a hiccup. And we get past that hiccup, and we're at the top of the next mountain. But yeah, I think that that's been the biggest learning experience for me. Becoming a tester was learning to appreciate the work that went into the process. You know, before I got there, it's like a whole new level of respect for.
Oh yeah.
There's guys like Pat Burton. Dusty Franklin, there's guys that are still examiners that were examiners when I started the process over 20 years ago, that are still like heavily invested in it.
Dedication.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
No, and I think like it's easy for people to go once and be like, oh, they're all against me. They're all wanting to make it be the worst and stuff like that. It's like, no, if you like generally even just a contest getting judged, they're trying to give you the best score they can. They're just they're trying to make it all work. If something slips by, it's like generally everybody's trying their best. They're not trying to screw anybody over at these deals.
They've also got
that might be the biggest hurtful thing that I've heard said is, like referring to testers as badge protectors or different things like that. And I mean, I haven't been around as long as other people, and there's bad eggs in everything, right? Like I'm sure at some point a tester made a mistake or an examiner did, but like overall, the level of sincerity is amazing. And it's like you show up at those deals and everybody's rooting for you. And if you think you had a bad day failing your horse and having to go home, that examiner did too. Like he had a bad day because you failed. It's that was like the best day for us is when like everybody got what they wanted, right? And that never happens, but
no, that goes. I think that goes for judging people too. Like if you're a judge somewhere and people don't do good, if you have a whole class of people, everybody was frustrated, you feel bad as the judge.
Yeah,
you're like, man, I didn't do a good job here. I didn't pick a good shoe. I didn't like explain myself good enough. People were
you guys
confused.
Froze.
Did we lose Doug?
Doug.
I think we lost him.
Oh, Dougie boy. Back in the saddle.
Yes, I had to take the computer apart real quick.
Rebuild it.
Yeah.
It's like a carburetor.
Those little screws got to be hard with just your fingers.
Yeah. I got to do them all left-handed.
Yeah. So you got to use your mouth. Well, Doug, we've kind of watched your window go from sunshine outside to dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Watch the sunset.
Yeah, feel bad. What time is it at your place right now? I think you're 3 hours ahead of us, aren't you?
It's 10:15.
Man,
yeah,
getting there.
It's like 3 hours past my bedtime.
Well, sorry for keeping you so late, Doug. Something that we do like to ask everybody on the show is, what would be 4 people that you can like hold in high regard? We call it a Mount Rushmore. 4 people that you kind of hold in high regard or respect and can contribute a lot of your success to, or somebody you just look up to.
4. That's easy. Yeah, I thought so I can do, or I could do 9, but no, hands down. So like Dick Becker was obviously huge. Like I owe it all to him. Going all the way back to Ed Groves out there in Maine, he got me in touch with Dick, turned me on to the whole thing. It's so hard after that because it's like I feel like there's hundreds. And so after Dick, so I guess before Dick, it would have to be my mom and dad, because they spanked me, and that's the best thing they ever did. So, yeah. So I guess, you never really think about that. Like everybody always asks who is the biggest contributors in your career. It's like my mom and dad taught me how to work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you.
They taught me how to be dependable and how to work hard. So and how to be likable. So I think people like me. You know what I mean? So if you're not likable, you're not going to get opportunities.
Well, I've never met somebody that said, "Oh, I hate Doug Russo." Everyone's always like, "Man, I love that guy."
Not yet, right? So yeah. I'm sure somebody I'm sure I made somebody mad. So, yeah, my mom, dad, Dick, I'm trying to think. Like a lot of those guys where I really cut my teeth was in Michigan. And so that was Jeff Powers. He worked along with me with Dick. And then and Jennifer Horn.
Are you related?
No, she calls me little brother because I broke a lot of her tools. So it's like, yeah, I earned that nickname. But and then I guess like truthfully, the people that really helped me were the people I taught. So, like Jacob Eddings and Joel Armstrong and boy, I'm gonna start forgetting a lot of the guys that Scott Bouchard, yeah, like so those guys, like watching them progress, and then at like especially in the case of Scott, like I'm learning from Scott. You know what I mean? Like he's passed me up on the foraging end of things, and so I guess like the other big like the biggest contributors, you'd say you don't ever think of your apprentices, but I guess in my case it'd be a lot of my apprentices.
That's
So
really cool.
I feel like I didn't do a good job answering that.
No, that was
question.
great.
Yeah,
That was good. Well,
I think you hit 9.
You led me into a different little hole. I got one more question I want to ask you, and you talked about your parents spanked you, but you have raised 3 good children of your own. What is some advice out there for people raising children that you have of how do you raise good kids?
Well, I mean that's such a big thing, but like I think part of it with me was that I like I married a good woman, right? And so my wife is like phenomenal with the kids. So I'd have to give her a lot of that credit. But I think I heard it said once that if you don't like your kids, nobody else will either. It's kind of a true deal, right? Like if you raised a spoiled brat, that kid ain't gonna have any friends. And so then
put it.
opportunity, those people that nobody likes, nobody hires, nobody wants to be around them, and so leading by example, like giving 100%, being responsible, being dependable, and being a generous person. I think if you can make your kids all of those things, they're gonna have a good life, And if they have to put me in a nursing home, it'll probably be a really nice one.
It's one thing to look forward to.
Yeah.
There we go.
So,
That's awesome, Doug. I appreciate it very much. Spitting some advice at us and sharing your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you
guys.
very much, Doug.
Thank
You
you,
bet.
Doug.
you bet.
See you
Have a
soon
good night.
sometime then.
All right. See you.